This video is devoted to the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War. An interview with a 100-year-old veteran of the Great Patriotic War, Alexander Vladimirovich Lyubimov. The city of Samara, the year is 2025. Alexander Vladimirovich, you know, we're talking on the eve of the 80th anniversary of victory, right? Right. And I would like to ask you, do you remember May the 9th, 1945? Where did you witness the victory on May 9th? Well, the 9th of May, on the 9th of May, we just cleared Vienna. Vienna was taken very quickly, in just 4 days. As it turned out, the Viennese bridges across the Danube, there are several of them across the river. We had those morning fogs. And we brought our boats. A military flotilla was created specifically, not just in Austria, but in Hungary, where the Danube River flows. For some reason, they speak little of this flotilla, but it brought lots of benefits to us. It was, one might say, a battering ram. So in those morning fog, we, under the cover of the fog, found ourselves in the rear of these enemy troops. And being at the rear already means a lot. At the rear of the enemy, there is panic, enemy has, and everything else. Just like in the special military operation, the story with that pipe, a 15-kilometer pipe they used to get to the rear of the enemy. They have exterminated over 600 people, 600 men of the enemies. They told that on the radio. So that's why we took Vienna very quickly by going to the rear of the enemy. But it took a long time to clean it up. There were lots of different public and service buildings, and therefore, since our unit was defensive function, had a defensive function, we had those high explosive flamethrowers. We buried the high explosive charges in the ground, dug them in, and when necessary blew these charges up. The flame flew out 80 meters long, and it created a solid strip of fire. Nothing, not a tank, nothing could withstand it, this strip of fire. Well, it's a very long job, digging it in and so on. Were you a platoon commander? Yes, I was a platoon commander, flamethrower platoon. What was your rank? It was called the 7th Separate Flamethrower Battalion. And after graduating from the military school, I was sent to, well, we all were brought to Moscow, shipped to Moscow, and then we went. On which front was this? The first front was Karelia front, but military operations were already ending there by that time, and we practically didn't participate in them, since we had this defense function. So they didn't use us anymore. Only later, when from Leningrad these famous Stalinist operations began, 10 of them, from Leningrad and further to the south. We followed these troops, these operations. The first was the lifting of the blockade of Stalingrad. It was in January. Then, in February, further south, and so on. And eventually we found ourselves on the third front in Romania. What rank did you end the war with? I finished the war with the rank of lieutenant. Do you remember May 9th, 1945? How did you know that the war was over? I found it out from the Austrians, because on the 8th they signed an armistice agreement there. But our people were against it, because they signed a separate one. The Austrians. And Stalin demanded that all of this was reviewed. That day, the whole world knew the name of Stalin, and of course they listened to him. And the Austrians, where we were positioned near Vienna, a small town like ours, like a small town, and the distance is the same from it was the same short distance from to Vienna, and the dimensions are the same, except everything was destroyed there. Nothing was there, no industry, only there were machines in houses that made airplane parts. Americans raided it, bombed it, and turned it, the city into ruins. And they heard this, the news of peace on the radio. And I knew a little German, and this Austrian. Since I got on with him, well, communicated with him when we were settling in there, so he, of course, treated me the same way, and so when he heard it on the radio in the morning, he said to me, "Krieg is kaput, Krieg is kaput." I said, yes, war is over. No, you don't understand. The war is over. Krieg's kaput. I say radio. Yes, radio. They all knew the Russian word da, yes. Well, I didn't really believe him at first. I tell mine like this. Oh, come on. We didn't hear, there was no word that war is over. But they actually signed it on the 8th. So our people didn't know anything yet. Well, of course, on the 9th in Potsdam, all this was carried out in this magnificent way. The festivities. Czechoslovakia on the 14th was kicked out there. So one group of the remnants of the division that operated in Czechoslovakia decided to be captured by the English, by the British, and therefore pass us by, avoid us. So I got this star exactly when they started attacking us, to be captured eventually by the British. This is the red one, the red star. Yes. So they were moving along the Danube bank through Czechoslovakia, And in one place there are two Austrian cities, Klostenburg and Korneuburg, opposite each other. There is a well-organized crossing there. And these remnants of those Czechoslovakian, of the Germans, were moving along the shore to this good crossing over the river through the territory of Czechoslovakia. It was between these small towns, very well set up economic infrastructure, and it worked during the war. So they knew that they were trying to get to the western part of the river, the western bank, in order to then be captured by the British. It turns out they had an agreement with the British that it would be accepted. They would not be disbanded. They would be settled as they were, as a platoon, a company, and so on. The weapons will be put to the stock, to the warehouses. And your task was not to let them in. No, that was their agreement. So that's why they went and reached these two cities. And after we had finished clearing out Vienna, we went and for a time we were put in one of these cities. I don't remember which one, which bank it was, right or the left. But we were directly opposite each other. The cities were directly opposite each other. Then we had to go out eventually to the shores of the Atlantic Ocean, where the English Channel is, to meet the Americans. We were supposed to do that. Or maybe the English, I can't remember. The British. Meet them, friendly meeting and everything else. But it turned out that the remnants of this division started moving there, that grouped together with all their weapons. Well, of course, the struggle was very serious there. Managed to destroy a lot of that equipment they had. And I can't remember how many soldiers we destroyed. I had two boys there. Sons of I picked them off. Our guys, Russian 15-year-old boys, they lived in a village near Stalingrad. And when there were battles going on, fighting for Stalingrad, these two boys joined the large caliber artillerymen. These guns are not on the front line, in the rear. So these boys ate their food and used other things there. But then when we came to Austria, they turned 15. This lasted for 2 years. And they began to understand that the war is coming to an end. And they did nothing. And we wanted to shoot something. And one of our soldiers said to them, "Give me your watch, and I'll give you my gun. Shoot my assault gun." And they're stupid. It was a joke. They took it seriously and started. They found one Austrian. We're entering and inspecting the premises. A very tall Austrian is standing there. He raised his hands almost to the ceiling. He was giving up. Well, of course, not really, but... So they already trying to take his watch off. And I said, what the hell are you doing? So they told me, you're the youngest, take them with you. Take him with you. The Austrian. How old were you when the war ended? The war ended. So, in 1945, I was 21 years old. Which countries did you pass through? We passed through Romania. What was the attitude? And we crossed Hungary on foot because the battles were battles for Budapest. And we crossed from the border town, Romanian town, through the south of Hungary, straight into Austria. And I must say that the Austrians hated Hitler in their hearts. And they were afraid of our guys because they're armed. They were armed. The war is not over. They treated us positively. They treated us positively, Austrians. At least where we were stationed, where our military unit was. Everyone we've met were calm to us, did not tremble, were not afraid, did not run, although they hid the women. Just in case, because Hitler boys, that was normal for them not to. One of the women became a widow, no children. This German woman, she received an order to get to the station, mating station, where she became pregnant and gave birth to these children. This was an official, Hitler's official decree. They made women pregnant. So they treated women badly, Hitler's troops. So because of that, Austrians hid the women from the Soviet troops too, just in case. So Alexander Vladimirovich, tell me, you were still a very young man when you fought, right? Surely there were people around you who were older than you. Yeah, only old people. What kind of relationships were there within our army between the elderly and the youth? How did they build their relationships? The military discipline was observed in any case. You know, if they asked for me, I stood up as required and so on. And mutual personal relations were simple, like comrades who have known each other for a long time, like we've knew each other. Life itself, life was more fun that way. If someone was hurt, wounded, or killed, then everyone was equally worried. And from your point of view, how did our command treat, well, let's say, the soldiers?
хорошие были у вас командиры?
Did you have good commanders?
Как вот вы считаете,
What do
правильно
you think?
они
Did they
воевали?
fight
Или были
correctly, or were
какие-то
there some
люди, которые
people
не
who
жалели
did not
солдат для
spare
того, чтобы
soldiers
взять там
in order
какую-то
to take
какой-то
some
дате, как раньше
military,
говорили,
some
воинскую
territory by
часть?
some date,
Что
as they
было такое
used to
вообще?
tell us?
Значит,
Did
там
such
так,
thing exist?
я
Any kind of
понимаю
tyranny?
вопрос.
Yeah, I understand the
Значит,
question.
первая
So the
фамилия
first
Жуков.
surname,
Жукову
last name
отношение
is
было
Zhukov.
совершенно разное.
The attitude towards
Потому что
Zhukov was
Жуков
completely
был
different
жестокий.
because Zhukov was cruel.
Он был жестокий.
He was a cruel man.
Не знаю, может, потому что
I don't know, maybe
кавалеристом был, он начинал свою
Because he was
службу в
a
армии
cavalryman. He
кавалеристом,
started his service in the
где
army as a
нужно
cavalryman,
было
where he
своими
had
руками
to
бить по живому телу.
strike a living
Этой
person with his
шашкой,
saber, with his own
тут
hands.
уже и злость,
This means
и
that
всё
there
остальное
was anger and
воспитывается.
everything else. He was brought up this
Скорее всего,
way.
эта вот жестокость у него
Most likely
воспиталась
this cruelty was
служба
instilled in him by his
кавалерии
service in the cavalry, I think,
еще в мирное время.
during
Ну
peacetime,
там они
before the war. Yes,
били что, лоза, там стоят прутики, и вот он
they had these.
летит на всем
I saw how
скаку, и
they
должен этот
operated with the sabers when they trained. They hacked the vines with their sabers as target practice, and I saw them
рубить
doing
этот
it
самый прутик,
while on horseback,
направо, налево,
passing it,
там, и всё это
striking to the
такое.
right, to the left, and all that.
Конницу старым.
In the
Войну
old
конница
type of
уже не
cavalry
работала
during the old war,
по-настоящему.
but in the new
Она
war,
в
cavalry
основном,
didn't work, no longer worked.
С партизанами
not really.
шла.
It mostly worked with cavalry worked with partisans,
Партизаны.
with guerrillas.
А поэтому
And therefore,
Жуков, где
Жуков,
Жуков, значит, там будет битва,
where Zhukov is,
там
that
должна
means there
быть
will be a
победа.
fierce battle there,
Это
and there must
такой
be a victory.
девиз,
That was a motto
существовал
that
и
existed
у
among
солдат самых простых,
both among
и
the
у
ordinary
руководителей,
soldiers and the leaders
воинских
of
командиров было.
amongst the military
Что
commanders.
касается не Жукова,
As for
то взаимоотношения
the
были
rest, not
уважительные.
Zhukov, the relationship was
Это
respectful.
моё
The attitude was
впечатление.
respectful. This is my impression of them.
Такое осталось от
That
этого.
remained
Хотя
from
я
all
Жуковым
this.
не
Although I have never met Zhukov,
сталкивался, не
Never crossed
пересекались мы
paths.
нигде лично,
personally,
но по тем рассказам,
but from the
которые
stories I
слышал,
heard,
люди-то быстро менялись,
People
и то там, то там.
changed quickly
Кого вы видели самым
in
большом
different
звании?
circumstances. And who had the highest rank? Who have you seen with the highest rank? Oh, it was the hero of the Soviet Union,
Советского Союза Мамсурова,
Mamsurov,
осетина.
Ossetian guy.
Он стал героем
He became a hero of the Soviet Union
в 1936
in
году
1936
в Испании.
in Spain.
Он был генерал.
Генерал-лейтенант.
He was a general, yes, a lieutenant general.
А скажите, вообще,
Tell me, please,
наша армия была многонациональная, да, много
our
там
army
было
was
разных
multinational,
национальностей.
right? There were many different
У вас
nationalities there.
воевали в ваших частях какие-нибудь там из Средней
У
Азии?
меня
Did you
было
any
два
guys from
узбека,
Asia in your unit? I had two Uzbeks,
один мордвин,
one
в
Mordvin.
общем, четверо.
So in total there were four
Было разных
of different
национальностей.
people of different nationalities.
Никакого
There was no
различия.
difference.
Только иногда, слушай, а как на твоем языке это
Just
слово?
somehow we asked, what's that word in your
Ну,
language?
так
in Uzbek,
говорили все
right?
по-русски.
They all spoke Russian,
А если что-то хочется узнать там это, то друг у
But if you
друга
want to
переспрашивали, как на его языке.
know
это.
something,
Это
something
солдат.
personal, you always ask them, what's this or that word in their language.
Это между собой.
В Бога
Among
верили?
the soldiers, did they believe in God? In God.
В Бога
Well-
втихонечку крестились. Так
we made crossed ourselves so that no one could see.
закроется.
Made a cross.
А вообще страшно было, страшно на войне было.
Was it scary during the war?
В одиночку страшно.
It was
В
scary
одиночку
to be
идти
alone.
даже.
When you
Просто
walk alone,
знаешь
even
дорогу, был,
when you know the
ходил,
way. You've
но
been there,
идти страшно.
but it's scary.
Лазутчики
Because enemy scouts were
могут
everywhere.
перехватить,
They could take you,
в рот кляп
grab you,
затолкают,
gag you,
тащит и так
and
далее.
drag you away.
А вообще была вот к немцам ненависть прям?
Did you have a real hatred towards the Germans?
Да, вопрос сложный.
Well, it
Я
is a
пытаюсь
difficult question.
сюда- Конечно,
Of course,
была,
there was hatred.
была,
Yes, there
была.
was
А
hatred.
так как получали
Since
письма,
we received letters from the
когда
rear, Soviet
начали
rear,
освобождать,
and when we began to
там
liberate
деревни
territories,
сожженные,
we saw the burnt
там,
villages
там.
in different places.
Тыл был ими уничтожен.
They have destroyed the rear
Деревни
completely.
все это сжигали,
All villages were burned.
живьем
They burned people alive.
выжигали в сараях.
Александр Владимирович, почему
the
немцы
barns.
такие жестокие?
Why were the Germans so cruel?
Потому что им кажется, что мало
Why are?
земли.
Because they feel they don't have enough land.
А они по своему развитию
And,
выше всех, выше и французов.
and they are better in their development than everyone
Считают.
else,
Они
than the French.
слишком с гонором. И
They were
сейчас
arrogant,
у них
the
это
Germans.
есть.
And they still have.
Как вот вы считаете, в современной Германии, вот вы следите?
Do you
за тем,
think in
что
modern
сейчас в
Germany
мире
you are
происходит,
following
да?
what's happening in the world right
Какой
now,
расклад
right?
сил там
Yes.
сейчас в Европе?
What is the
Кто там
balance of
сейчас
power in Europe now?
главную
Who is in charge?
скрипку играет? Если американцев не
Who's
трогать.
playing the main role,
Сейчас
let alone the
Европа
Americans? Now in
значит,
Europe,
экономически
Europe is
застряла
economically stuck
в каком-то военном прошлом
in some
по
kind of wartime
уровню
past
обеспечения.
in terms of their
Продуктами,
supplies by
всем остальным.
food and everything else.
И, естественно,
And
НАТО
naturally,
для них
NATO
уже не
is no longer
интересно.
interesting to them.
Всем, которые вошли в НАТО, европейцы.
All Europeans who joined NATO are not interested in it.
Главной силой,
But the main
которая,
force
будет
that
мобилизована,
will be mobilized
станут немцы.
will be the Germans.
Больше всех могут поставить в армии.
The largest number of military
военнослужащих,
personnel
призывного возраста.
they can
И
draft
поляки?
of the draft age
Поляки,
are Germans, not Poles. Poles
полякам
Poles
нужно бить русских. Больше
need
они
to
ничего
beat the
не
Russians,
знают,
need to
и
fight
знать
against
не
the
хотят.
Russians. They don't know anything else, don't want to know
Вам
anything else.
приходилось иметь дело с поляками?
Have you ever had to deal with
Приходилось
Poles? We had
Ну
to
и чего,
communicate.
хорошие они воины.
Well, are they good warriors?
Если он ходит в сапогах на каблучках,
If a guy wears boots on
это не
heels,
солдат.
this is not a soldier.
Как вы считаете, из всех европейских народов,
In European, of all the
кто
European
лучше
nations,
всего
who treats
к
Russians
русским относится?
best?
Немцы, итальянцы,
Germans,
французы,
Italians,
там,
French,
болгары, не
Bulgarians,
знаю,
I don't
финны,
know,
норвежцы,
Finns, Norwegians,
англичане.
English.
Кто там у нас
Значит,
еще есть?
Who else?
норвежцы нас ненавидят.
Сербы.
Norwegians hated us.
Норвежцы нас с севера на юг.
Norwegians
Норвежцы нас
Stroke-
ненавидят.
s-
Потому
striked
что
us
мы,
from north to south. The Norwegians
там
hate us because
последний 10-й удар был
the last
по
10th blow
Норвегии.
Сталинский.
they dealt,
Значит,
Stalin
они с
dealt
тех
on
пор
Norway.
нас недолюбливают.
so they don't like
И
us since
сейчас
then, and
Это чувство.
it can be felt today too.
Шведы
The
все
Swedes
как это,
are like
а после Карла
more or less
XII
after
они
Charles
заняли
XII,
нейтральные
they took a neutral
позиции.
position But now they pushing Finland against us. Finland depends on them completely. I've been to Finland. I've been to Helsinki. I've been to Turku. All spoke. All the streets are marked in two languages: Swedish and the Finnish. Now, then come the Baltic states to the south. They're, so to speak, political prostitutes. All three states, especially Lithuania, is the smallest of all. It was bought by Catherine, Queen Catherine, for gold. And then when they broke free, they can no longer stand the Russians. This is what Queen Catherine did. Poles, I'll say again, that they're not warriors. If he walks 10 kilometers by foot, he will fall apart, a pole, on these heels they had on their boots. And this was the official uniform they wore, with the boots on heels. And they're always arrogant, these guys, these Poles. The Hungarians treated us, had this double attitude towards us, two different attitudes. First of all, they've lived in our region. They first lived in Altai. And when from the east, Genghis Khan came from the east, they took off and left. They went to the south of the Ural Mountains, to Bashkiria. By the way, in Bashkiria, there are many Hungarian words in Bashkirian language. Right now it is believed that Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, he is somehow loyal to Russia. And do you think the Hungarian population itself, how do they in general feel about Russians? Well, I have to say that it's a multi-layered population. There are rich. There are Bulgarians and the rest. They have Bulgarians and the rest. Not the same as us. We were all working people. Some live better, some live worse, but everyone's a worker. But they had rich people. They didn't have this. That is why they had no unity within the nation in their attitude towards us. As for Urban doesn't understand. When we built them a nuclear power, and now they need to change, replace the fuel there. They need to contact us in one way or another, and Orban understands that. What do you think about the Romanians and the Moldovans? Romanians are gypsies. They consider themselves to be descendants of the Romans. Romania. You know what's special about Romania? There was no Romanian state. It was born the gypsy way. It was Wallachia, I think. Yes. It was a colony of France long time ago, at one time. That's why the French language there's quite has quite a lot of layers in the Romanian language. And the Italians, the French, they all love the French, the Italians. Many of our people are living for Italy, live there. Italians, how do you think they treat us? Italians hate Europe. Really? Yes. I had a comrade, a friend, comrade. His son got married and he and his wife left for Italy. So he lives there, in Italy. And when I talked to him, to this comrade of mine, Stanislav Anisimov, I say, how are things with your Italians? He says, no, it's okay. They already started studying Russian. They got children there. Well, probably. They treat us cautiously, I think. And the French, we don't really know about the French. I have never heard of them. Have never heard of them anywhere. But judging by how the president of France is behaving right now, I don't know. Maybe he wants to become a new Napoleon or something. Apparently, yes. The Spaniards, what can I say about Spain? Oh. In the institute where I learned, where I studied, General Mamserov's wife was Spanish. In 1936, he fought there, and he received the title of Hero of the Soviet Union there, and he married her there. When I was studying in Moscow, I met her several times, but they were communists, you see. They came to live here in Russia. Of course, the communists treated it as their own homeland, as if it was their second homeland, Russia. How did it happen that in addition to Germany, fascist regimes also rose in Spain, Franco, and in Italy, Mussolini? Why fascism even arose? Well, that's an interesting question. How did fascism conquer German people? It conquered Germany when there was an economic decline, and Hitler helped to raise Germany economically. But he alone could not carry it all. So therefore probably Mussolini started being in cahoots with Hitler, and then Hitler entered fascism with the help of Mussolini. Who is General Franco? I cannot answer. Tell me, right now there's an opinion that fascism is being revived. Yes, it is. How do you feel about this? True. It will be revived because economy is in decline. And the elders of Europe remembered
Но он
Hitler was a
поднял
fascist, but
экономику.
he raised the economy.
То есть может сейчас возникнуть не только
Может.
на Украине,
So it can
где
appear not
нацисты,
just
да,
in
то есть
Ukraine where the Nazis
Может.
are, right? Yes, it can, because
Экономика
economy
садится вниз.
is declining. It's falling
Не без участия
down.
американцев.
Of course, Americans take part in that.
мы разобрали с вами почти все страны Европы.
So we
за
covered
исключением
almost all the
Англии.
countries of Europe except
Есть
for
мнение, что именно
Great
Великобритания
Britain.
сейчас
There's an opinion that
пытается
Great Britain is right now trying
управлять
to
Европейским Союзом. И она главный
direct European
спонсор
Union,
Зеленского идеологически.
manage it. And it's
Что вы
Zelensky's
думаете про
main
Великобританию?
ideological sponsor.
Я считаю
What do you think
её
about Great
самым
Britain? I
злейшим
consider
врагом
Great
не
Britain the
только
worst enemy,
нашего
not of
государства,
only
но
our
и
state,
Европы
but of
вообще.
Europe in general.
Почему?
Why?
Потому что
Because
они потеряли
they
огромное
lost a
количество
huge
своих
number of
доминионов,
their
своих
dominions,
бывших
their
колоний,
former colonies,
англичане.
the British.
И раньше
And
они
before,
жили как хотели.
They lived the way they wanted.
Всех грабили.
They
Всем
robbed everyone and supplied
снабжали.
them with everything.
Доминионы все
The dominions,
Ну, правда, еще
they took everything from their
Португалия,
colonies.
она же
Portugal
это морская
is
держава,
also a maritime power.
флот был большой.
It had
Для
a large
маленького
fleet
государства
for a small state.
удельный вес очень такой большой был.
Its
Да,
weight
вот
was very
еще
large.
хорошо пользовалась
It also
Португалия.
made good use
А
of
сейчас
Portugal. And now,
везде идет упадок экономики.
economic decline is everywhere
Потому что
because
перестали
new
строиться
factories
новые
have stopped being built.
предприятия.
they don't build new factories
Всюду,
everywhere,
кроме нас.
except our
А
country.
у нас
Here.
продолжают строиться.
We continue building the factories.
Совсем недавно
Just recently,
Путин поднимал вопрос
Putin
в
raised the
отношении
question regarding
развития
the development of
Сибири и
Siberia
Дальнего
and
Востока.
Far East.
Я вот сегодня раскрывал у
Today
меня
I
большущая карта БАМа.
Opened big
Ну, мне
maps
приходилось там
today.
бывать на станции Теркан. Вот, ездил туда в служебную командировку. Вот.
map of
И я, значит, посмотрел,
Baikal-Amur
что БАМ, потому
Highway.
что о БАМе заговорили.
because they started
Вторую
about
линию
talking
хотят
about it.
прокладывать наши. Там
They want to
одна
build
путка.
the second line that would supply the Far East
Железные
and
дороги.
Siberia. Second track of
Причем,
the
когда
railway
ее
they want to
делали,
lay.
были
Moreover, when it was being
неприятности,
done, there were problems
в районе вечной
in the
мерзлоты
permafrost area.
сползала,
It kept sliding
Всё.
off,
таяла
Everything.
вечная мерзлота
The
под
permafrost
низом
was melting,
и сползала
and the road
полотно вместе с насыпью
slid down.
в сторону.
Как вы считаете, БАМ, Транссибирская магистраль,
Do you think the
строились на
Trans-Siberian
восток,
Railway
и сейчас это один из основных каналов.
What do you think
связи
about it? It's one of the
экономических
main
с Китаем.
channels of economic relations
Китай
with
очень
China.
сильно
China
за
has
последние
risen very
полвека
strongly over the
поднялся. Он сейчас
last half
фактически
century.
является второй или
It's now
первой
effectively the
экономикой
second
мира.
or first
Да.
economy in
И
the
мы
world.
очень сильно
Yes.
зависим сейчас
And we're now
от
very
Китая.
dependent on
Да.
China.
Соединенные Штаты это другой
The United
центр
States
силы.
is another center of
Как вы
power.
полагаете,
Do you think
удастся
Russia will be
России
able to
сохранить
maintain
суверенитет
its
свой
sovereignty
и не стать
and not become
колонией
a colony of
США
the United
обратно или
States
колонией
again
Китая?
or a colony of China?
Для того, чтобы стать
In order to
колонией,
become a
нужно,
colony,
чтобы развалилась экономика.
the economy
А она
must collapse.
развалится, если не
And it will
будут
collapse
строиться новые
if
предприятия,
new enterprises, new
новым
factories
технологиям.
will not be built using new technology.
Если мы будем строить
If we
новые
build
предприятия
new
по новым
enterprises using new
технологиям,
technology,
мы
we will
выдержим все.
survive
Потому
everything
что у нас
because
есть
we
всё.
have everything.
Вся таблица
The entire
Менделеева
periodic table of resources.
есть у нас. У нас есть
We've got
и редкоземельный
also
элемент.
rare earth
То же самое.
elements.
Поэтому
Therefore,
путь в новые
the path
технологии для
to
нас
new technology
распахнут.
is wide open for us.
Ворота открыты.
The gates are open,
Все
figuratively
дело
speaking.
в
It's all
грамотности
about now the literacy
русского народа.
of the Russian people.
А как вы думаете, экономика наша
Do you think our
принадлежит
economy
олигархам?
belong
Она
to the
принадлежит
oligarchs
государству?
or to the state?
А вот тут-то у нас Путин не случайно тревожный.
So there is no
Он не случайно тревожный.
coincidence Putin is anxious about this.
Олигархов
Not
у
by
нас
chance.
достаточно много.
We've got quite a lot of oligarchs.
Один момент очень
Is one very
интересный,
interesting point,
о котором я узнал
which I learned
несколько лет
about
назад.
several years ago.
Значит, существует такое
There is
понятие
such a
в
concept
мировом
in the global
морском
maritime
пространстве
space
принадлежность государству. Значит, уже
belonging
это
to
по
a state. This
международным
means, according
правилам,
to the international rules,
200
a
километров
200-kilometer
шлейф. Если от
strip,
берега уходит
200 kilometers
куда-то,
from the
эти
shore.
200
These
это
200 kilometers
принадлежность
are the
данного
property of
государства.
this state, of a certain state.
Охотское море
The
было
Okhotsk Sea
международным.
used to be international,
Но несколько лет
but several
назад
years ago,
со стороны Камчатки,
from
значит,
Kamchatka side,
но с участием международных
but
организаций,
with participation of international
провели
organizations,
исследования
they conducted a
и
study
нашли,
and
что
found
шлейф
that
от Камчатки в
this
сторону материкового
Kamchatka strip
берега
towards the
идет
mainland
дальше.
goes
И когда
further,
наложили на карту,
and when they
оказалось,
put it on the map, turned out that the
между
distance
концом
between the end of the
Камчатского
Kamchatsky
шлейфа и
trail
вот
and the
материковым
mainland
берегом меньше
coast was less
400
than
километров.
400
То
kilometers.
есть 200
That is
километров
200
по
kilometers
сути, 200 отсюда. И
from this
сейчас
side and
Охотское
200 from
море
that
стало
side, so it's
нашим
our
внутренним.
territory. And now the Sea of Okhotsk has become
По
our internal sea.
принадлежности. Никто в мире
No one
не
in the world
выступил.
came
вот-
forward to speak against this.
В отношении Арктики
But
у
in
нас
Arctic,
граница
our
была
border
до Северного полюса
up to the North
на
Pole,
карте.
we had our border
по меридианам.
along the meridians
Раньше я учился.
previously, when I studied.
А сейчас нам
When I-
оставили 200.
And now they left
А
us
вся часть,
200
прилегающая
and
вот
the entire
этот
part
круг
adjacent to this
к
circle,
Северному
to
полюсу,
the North Pole,
международный.
is international.
Поэтому
That's
наши
why our
стали
people
строить
started building
ледокол другого типа,
ice crusher ships of a different type.
уже его спустили на воду,
The icebreaker, they've already built and launched it, put
сейчас
it to water,
на обкатку
and now
в
they're
корпусе
testing it
в Балтийском
the hull
море, в Ленинграде
in the
его
Baltic Sea.
строят здесь.
in
Он
Leningrad.
будет наползать на льдины
It'll crawl onto the
толщиной там
ice
сколько-то
that are
метров.
several
Короче
meters
говоря,
thick.
в Ледовитом океане будет
So
вот
in the
так
Arctic
раздавливать.
Ocean,
Не колоть, как
you will
Ермак колол.
crush them, not break them.
Самый. Наш ледокол разгоняется,
When they
назад,
accelerate
разгоняется и острым носом
and cut it with
режет.
its sharp
Вот,
nose
ледоколы,
part.
это еще до войны, которая
Such
была.
icebreakers existed before the war.
Вот, а
But this
этот
one
будет
will
наползать. И мы
crawl
его сейчас обкатку
up on
делаем.
these,
Это
so it's a new way for crushing the ice.
я
Not
по
breaking, but
радио
crushing the
слышал
ice.
это.
I heard this on the radio. Do you think Putin will sign an agreement with Trump, an agreement on Ukraine? I haven't heard anything from political scientists about this topic. They're keeping quiet because it's probably very difficult to sign it. What is the optimal outcome of the conflict in Ukraine now? What would be a victory in your understanding? We need another pipeline. To Odessa or to Kiev? Well, 600 people passed. No. They are now left without an army. Without a regular army. Conscripts. No conscripts. There are only small fragments from the army remain there. So therefore, they have only one way out, to make peace with us. As for Zelensky, he's a drug addict. We cannot expect from a drug addict any regular actions, useful for everyone. You're currently the oldest communist, a member of the Communist Party in Samara. Since 1953. Say a few words about your attitude towards the policies of the Bolsheviks, the Soviet Russia, administrative national ones. Do you think it was a mistake when Soviet Union transferred large territories from Russia to Ukraine, to Kazakhstan, to give them some of the territories? Well, Kazakhstan remained within its borders, as they were when it was part of the Soviet Union. They didn't add anything to it. Only the length of the border strip increased. We need to increase the border guard there. Well, they annexed Uralsk, the Cossack territory, in the Urals, and in Omsk. And as for Novorossiya, this is a different question, an economic one. And I remember well the slogan, 8-ton harvest. That is, to collect 8 million pods. One pod is 16 kilograms. So 8 million by 16 kilograms of grain crops. Why the slogan existed? Because, and I was still a boy then, when the slogan was everywhere. I was 13, 15. At that time, this was not a mistake to give those territories to the republics. Because bread, Ukraine produced more bread than all the other republics. We didn't have grain crops that could withstand the Siberian colds. They were created eventually, such crops, but not when I was 13, 15 years old. They were created much later. It was science was at work.
Сейчас мы
Science.
хлебом обеспечены.
Now we were
И
provided with bread
поэтому
well,
это понять, ощутить
and
трудно.
it's difficult
А
to
зачем надо
feel
было
today.
присоединять русские территории?
Why was it necessary to annex
Украине?
Russian territories to Ukraine?
А нужно было тракторы.
We needed
А у
tractors,
нас было построено
and we
только
only
3
had
завода
3 factories built
тракторно-танковых. Харьков,
in
Челябинск
Kharkov, in Chelyabinsk,
и Томск.
and in Tomsk.
Каждый свой район
Each
обеспечивал
district was
всем,
provided with
не
everything,
только тракторами,
not just
но и
only
всей
tractors,
сельскохозяйственной техникой.
but with all
Самый
the
крупный
agricultural
завод
equipment.
это
The largest plant
Россельмаш
was
в Ростове.
Rosselmash in Rostov.
Там все, и комбайны,
Everything was built there.
и
Harvesters,
веялки, сеялки,
seeders,
все там
everything.
производят. Это огромнейший завод.
It was a huge plant.
Значит, именно по 3 направлениям
So the development
и
would be
развитию.
in 3 directions.
Это тогда нужно было.
Then it was
Тогда
necessary.
это было
It
грамотно.
was necessary. Then it was smart then.
А сейчас,
And
конечно,
now,
уже
of course,
другое движение
there is a
транспорта,
completely different traffic
другие
flow now,
дороги,
and different roads,
и другие заводы,
and different
и их
factories,
много
and there are
уже.
many of them already.
Александр Владимирович, как вы относитесь
Александр
к
Владимирович,
наплыву в
what
Россию мигрантов
What do you think
сейчас
about the
из Средней
current
Азии,
influx
из
of
Закавказья?
migrants into Russia
Есть
from
в этом
Central
какая-то
Asia and
угроза для России?
Caucasian region? Is there any threat to Russia in
Она
this?
уже
Yes, there is.
чувствуется.
It can
Потому
already be
что
felt, this threat,
появляются,
because
ну, бандитские
bandit-like
с их стороны.
things, groups appear on their part.
Дело в том, что
The thing is that
думаю,
I
это
think,
я предполагаю,
I
что
assume that
руководство
the leadership of those former
республик
republics
бывших не
does not
грамотно подходит к решению своих задач.
solve their
Не
problems
умеет
competently.
грамотно построить
They don't know how to
хозяйство
competently build
своей страны,
the economy of their country,
развивать ее.
to develop it.
Это одно.
That's one
Второе.
thing. Secondly,
Москва
Moscow
это не самое лучшее
is not the
место
best place
для администрации.
to put the
Все-таки
government there.
Ленинград культурный.
Leningrad is a more
Может
cultural
быть, здесь
city.
замешано кто-то, не вся Москва,
Maybe someone is
кто-то
involved, not all of Moscow, but someone
втихую
is doing quietly
вредит.
some harm to the country.
Может быть.
Maybe
Ведь
because
потому что был же вот недавно событие.
just recently we have had
Kazakhstan.
those events in Kazakhstan.
Путин
The
тогда послал,
Islamists, yes, Putin sent
всех это самое сделал, посадили на место.
everyone to put them into their
Только
place.
Путин послал.
Putin
а не
sent,
Москва пошла.
not Moscow.
А как вы
Sent
считаете, почему вот
the
в странах
forces
Средней
to do
Азии
that.
местные
Why do you think
правительства
that in
очень
countries of
жестко
Central Asia, the
борются
local
с
governments
исламистами?
are fighting
Запрещены-
Islamists?
Запрещено
harshly.
женщинам носить паранджу.
Women are
Niqab,
prohibited
то есть
from wearing a
закрывать
burqa,
лицо,
niqab,
черный просто.
that is
Это
covering their
городе.
faces,
Да,
А у нас разрешено.
beards. But we
И
have,
все сюда едут.
we
Почему так?
permit this here in Russia, and they all
Это-
come here. Why is that?
так сказать,
This is, so to speak,
это национализм.
nationalism.
Короче говоря,
In
так,
short.
это национализм.
This is
Укрепить
nationalism.
свою
They want to
национальность.
strengthen their
А
nationality.
бабушки, старушки,
Grandmothers old
их
women,
много всегда в
there are
каждом
always many of them
государстве.
in every country.
Вот, они свое тянут, они свое
They
ведут,
take their own thing
они
with them,
воспитывают
lead their
таких
life.
девочек
There
и
is
так
such
далее.
this kind of girls and so
Всем
on.
интересно таким девочкам, потом
These girls
они
are interested in this, then they grow up
к женам,
and become wives
матерей
and mothers.
становятся. Так что тут
So
именно национализм.
This is precisely nationalism, the revival of nationalism.
Это опасная
This is a
штука.
dangerous thing.
Одна из самых больших угроз
One of the
России
biggest
сейчас
threats to Russia now
демографический
is the
кризис.
demographic crisis.
Как вы думаете, что
Do you
нужно
think
сделать
what
для
needs to
того,
be
чтобы
done
наш
to
народ не
ensure
вымирал,
that our people
и чтобы у нас
does not
рождаемость
die
в
out,
стране росла
did not
вот
die
именно
out, and that the
русских,
birth
коренных
rate in our
народов,
country
татар,
increases,
бурятов,
specifically
там,
among
осетин
Russians
и
and
так далее?
indigenous peoples, Tatars, Buryats, Ossetians, and so on.
Не может правительство справиться.
The government can't cope with
В
that,
общем,
apparently.
правительство здесь
Well,
делать практически ничего
The
не
government
сможет.
can do practically nothing here.
У нас же было это в
We had
советское
this
время,
in the Soviet Union. We had the same thing.
когда ввели
When
награду, орден.
there was this order of the mother, heroine mother,
Почему ввели?
was introduced. Why
Это
was it
еще при
introduced,
Сталине
this
ввели.
order, this medal?
Эти самые, мать героини.
Because-
Потому что действительно уже
Because we really,
тогда
then,
мы вымирали.
we were dying out.
Вторая волна вымирания.
There was the second wave of extinction of
А
Russians.
первая, когда я учился.
The first one was when I was in school.
Тогда была введена вот эта вот самая
Back then we
орден
had
и
this
медаль.
order and the medal.
Значит, всё это
Mother,
вот
heroine mother.
накануне самой
All this
войны.
happened on the very
Это
eve
где-то там
of the war,
37-й,
somewhere around
вот так вот.
in 1937 or so. Well, what should we do now?
Вернуть
Well,
эти ордена
maybe return these
медали.
orders and medals.
можно,
Of course, we can do
но
that. But
тяги к ним
there's no
не будет. Почему?
desire for them
Потому что
today.
тогда
Why? Because back
у
then
нас с каждым
our life
годом
was getting better every
становилась
year
лучше жизнь.
in the Soviet
С
Union.
каждым годом
Life was getting better every year.
лучше жизнь. Я когда перешел в
When
8
I
класс,
And
то
passed to grade 8,
эту самую забастовку в доме
They started this
учинил.
I started a strike
Что я
in my
больше
house
летом босиком бегать
at
не
home.
буду.
that I won't run
Я
barefoot
уже
in
8
summer
класс
anymore.
перешел.
I'm already in the 8th
И
grade.
мне купили
and they
ботинки
bought
на лето.
Boots for the summer.
Ноги-то росли.
My
в этом
parents,
возрасте
for me.
и
Well, my legs
Ну
were
что,
growing
на
at that
год?
age. For how long
на сезон,
would they
на
last?
2.
For a year
максимум.
or two.
Больше не хватает эти самые. И поэтому потом
So then you need new
приходило
boots.
время,
When the time came,
сдавали скупку в магазин.
we handed
на
over to the
Ленинградской
buyout,
был.
handed the boots to the
Значит, чистили,
buyout
всё
store on the
это
Leningradskaya
приходили.
street,
А
and they
осенью,
cleaned them and resold
я
them. And in the
приход-
fall,
приходил,
I
значит,
came
с матерью или с
with my
кем,
mother or someone
мерил
else
очередные
and
чьи-то ботинки. Но
try
они
on
уже
someone
будут
else's
были не
boots.
мои.
They were no longer my
Но все
own,
менялось.
but bigger ones.
А
But
уж
everything
потом
changed.
я вообще перестал.
And then I
оттуда.
stopped going there
Появилась у
altogether.
меня новая рубашка.
I had a new
красивая.
shirt,
Значит,
beautiful shirt,
шелковая рубашка
silk
появилась.
shirt.
Это то же самое, там, показать себя,
Well, sewing off
выше потолка
and
и все
put your nose above the ceiling and all that.
было? Каждый год
All this changed
менялось,
every year for the better.
поднимало. А сейчас
And now
А почему это
there's no
рухнуло?
such thing. Why did all this
потому
collapse?
что у нас
Well, because
трудно даже сказать
hard
причину.
to even
В
say
чем
what the
причина,
reason
что
was.
советская власть
What's the reason? Why did the Soviet power collapse
и разрушили Советский Союз, и
and the Soviet Union was
разогнали
destroyed
Советы?
and the Soviets were dispersed? Why was that?
Как так получилось?
По-моему,
How did this happen?
взятки.
In my opinion,
Горбачев
bribes,
был генеральный
corruption.
секретарь ЦК.
Gorbachev was the general secretary of the Central Committee. Yes, and Yeltsin secretary first of the Sverdlovsk Regional Committee. Yes, then of the Moscow City Committee. That is, it was all the highest party elite. At what point did things go wrong after Stalin's period? After Andropov? Or when? Andropov. General Secretary. He actually began to fight against this. I remembered our director, where I worked at the company Soviet Enterprise Orgenergostroy on the Samara Square it is now. Our goal is communism. They had this slogan written there. Yes, yes, on the top of the building. So he was on a business trip. Our director was in Moscow on a business trip. And during working hours, he visited the store, a store. And there, they examined it during Andropov's time. They asked him, where are you from? From Kuybyshev city. Why are you here? What are the money? These are travel expenses. You're clear. Why are you right now in the store? Do you have nothing to do? So they were restoring order back then. Yes, Andropov started introducing order. The director arrived and received a reprimand from his seniors. He also arrived at the department heads meeting and got a reprimand. So that was the picture then. Keep this in mind for the future. If you are caught, well, you have only yourself to blame, right? Yes. Andropov started it. It was already then under Andropov. And the collapse began. Why? Khrushchev is the reason for collapse. He published a book. They published a book, and I read it. It's called Khrushchev's slush. He destroyed everything for us, Khrushchev. How do you feel about the 20th Party Congress and the debunking of the so-called personality cult of Stalin? This is what caused the collapse. That is what's called Khrushchev's. That's what Khrushchev's times did. Do you think on the 20th Congress of the party to take those decisions about Stalin's personality cult? It happened in 1955. He at first demobilized of the army in Russia. Khrushchev did that. Of the officers in ranks from lieutenant to captain. I was a captain at that time. But not all, but those who participated in the war and preferably had awards. I had awards and the rank, so I was demobilized from the army, fired. And there was a large, I don't know the exact number. He was afraid of the army, right? Yes, he was afraid of the army and of Zhukov. Yes, and of Zhukov. And they were afraid of war veterans with awards. We received them from Stalin, on behalf of Stalin. How did people generally feel about Stalin? Did they really love him? Respect? Yes, they really loved him. The whole Moscow cried when he died.
Когда он умер?
I had relatives
Как вы
there.
считаете, Волгоград
They all
надо
cried when
вернуть?
he died. Do you think
Или
Volgograd should
Stalingrad?
be renamed to Stalingrad?
Надо.
Yes, this is necessary to
сейчас
do.
30
We should
километров
rename it.
вдоль берега,
30 kilometers
город
along the coast,
и какой-то Волгоград.
the city, and some. What is the
Что
name
это за
Volgograd? What
название?
kind of name
Ну,
is
ну,
this?
Не хочешь Волгоград, Царицын возвращай.
Well,
Города
why
у вас
don't we
были
rename it to Tsar's city, Tsaritsyn, if you renamed it to Volgograd? Don't stop there.
Не. Или вы первый?
У меня был двоюродный брат по...
Или столетняя? Или
Did you have people in your family who also lived to 100 years, or are you the first
вы первый?
У меня был
to be
двоюродный
100
брат
years old?
по
I had
материнской линии.
a brother on my mother's side.
91
He turned
год.
91. He lived
А
for
вот как вы
91
объясняете,
years.
что вы дожили до 100 лет?
How did
Повезло
you
просто,
manage to
или здоровье,
live
или
to
какие
be
секреты?
100 years old?
Вот
What are the tricks? Is that health?
Посоветуйте, кто хочет, чтобы
Give an
дожить до
advice
100
to
лет.
anyone who wants
Как
to
вот он
live.
должен себя держать, что делать?
How should
Я
he
думаю,
that long? How
работа
should one
мозга.
behave? I think it's all about brain work.
А с 4-летнего
From the
мне
age of
шел
4,
5-й год,
I was 5.
папа мне выписал
And Dad
Мурзилку.
Wrote
Потому
me
что
a
я
Murzilka
уже
journal for
складывал
magazine for
слова.
kids,
А
because I could
научила
already
меня
put these words
двоюродная
together. And
сестра, которая
it was
была
my
старше
cousin
меня на
who was
4
4 years
года.
older than me taught me
Самое
to read.
главное, это все время
So the most important
Работа
thing is, yes,
мозга.
keep the brain working all the time.
Я всегда ищу
I always
все
look for
новости
the
и
news
перевариваю
and
русскую.
digest them in my brain.
Я ссылался вам, что с этого
I told you
услышал,
that
это услышал.
I heard
И
this and heard that,
перевариваю.
so I kind of
Стараюсь
work it
запомнить.
all out in my
То
brain.
есть
I try to
тренировка
remember.
памяти.
So memory training. So this is the end of the interview. It was in Samara City, 2025. That's it. Bye bye.